This week, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange fined a South African international retail holding company Steinhoff just over 13 million rand for violation of its listing requirements. This after an accounting scandal that wiped over 200 billion rand off the company's books. It became the biggest fraud in South African corporate history. The company's executives attended parliamentary hearings but were not subjected to prosecution. The biggest victims were government employees who lost some 12 billion rand invested in the company, with recent highly publicized arrests of some individuals accused of corruption. Some South Africans are asking whether justice is only served when only blacks are arrested. And joining us for this perspective on this particular conversation is, of course, political analyst Dr. Somadoda Fikeni. Dr. Somadoda Fikeni, thank you so much for your time tonight. Let's talk about this. Does it look like the scales are unbalanced here?
There is no doubt that our constitution is a good constitution, but it is crafted in a manner that allows for those who have resources to prevail. Justice is not easily accessible and it can be quite costly. But there is also no doubt that if corruption is taking place in the private sector, especially the big companies, they get off almost freely. We've seen this slap in the hand for those white companies which were involved in the 2010, corruption scandal. Now we are seeing Steinhoff. We've seen even Bosas and so forth. But the media does assist in that particular situation and bias, because most of the white culture are not for their home, where every aspect of their livelihood is exposed.
And when you look at the fact that, some people are coming out to say that this appears to be a color issue, do you think it's as simple as it being a black and white issue?
It is both color and also class. Unfortunately, in South Africa, there is a strong correlation between class and color. That is why you often find that when we talk of corruption, we're looking at government officials, but we hardly ever look at other entities. For example, you have your KPMG, McKinsey, you do have Steinhoff, you do have many others, construction companies involved in 2010. In each one of these cases, you'll find that more emphasis has been more on the public officials, not even top politicians for that matter. And they seem to have been the ones who are sacrificial lambs. Until and unless justice is seen to be fair and applied equally to everyone, then it will be politicized, it will be weaponized because of the biases.
And when you look at, the recent developments around Steinhoff, you look at what the chief executive had to say in that statement, and he said that he's pleased that the JSE has concluded its investigation into this matter. But that statement really reads like he's ticking a box and certainly not understanding how big this matter is.
Certainly, without any doubt. In fact, the Steinhoff matter, you go back to the time when they were supposed to appear in Parliament. They simply declined to cooperate to some extent, and now you do have the JSE, and the penalties which are imposed there are simply so minuscule. That's why ticking the box in that instance is quite easy. Even though you look at the investment from PIC and other government funds, which might have been lost when there was this creative accounting of corruption, in essence, effected at Steinhoff.
Dr. Fikeni, I'm going to ask us just to pause there for a bit. I do understand we've got Sipho Mandula on the line, who's from the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs. Sipho, it's always a great pleasure to talk to you. Let's talk really about this issue here. When you look at Steinhoff, when you look at some of the cases that are really going unreported here, in fact reported, but no arrests are being made. Certainly, there does appear to be a scale that is not balanced when it comes to this issue.
Evening, my sister, even to the viewers. You will remember that we are currently in that state of the Zondo Commission looking at all
All right, that line there appears to be disappointing us. We are going to try and re-establish a better line with Sipho Mandula. Dr. Fikeni, if I can continue with you here. When you look at this particular issue, I mean, 13.5 million rand, some are saying that this is a slap on the wrist, particularly when you look at the fact that there are people that, you know, really got to be hardest hit by this, and especially when you look at those government employees, over 12 billion rand invested in that particular company. Shouldn't people be behind bars now?
There is no doubt that people should be behind bars, not just left alone. And also the media can assist here and have the same level of intensity investigating the lifestyle of those involved, even their family members. They can, investigate whether they were given their bonuses, their pensions. And that is where you could be putting pressure and raising public awareness. And also raising the very same issue that access to justice is not equal, and also justice is very costly. And that in itself, I do think that will put a spotlight in the racial bias in our justice system at times.
And Sipho, I do understand you are back with us now. Let's just, canvass this with you further, particularly when you look at the fact that the scale appears to be balanced. It is, in fact, not balanced here. How does this affect the credibility of the fight against corruption?
No, definitely, my sister. I agree with my elder brother, Somadoda Fikeni, saying that it seems that justice is not focusing even on these issues. There is some bias and there is the race card that is being played. Fighting corruption, my sister, the issues of fraud and forensic in this country have been the challenge that we have never even transformed. How do we track even the previous apartheid looters, those who have looted during apartheid? Hence there was that call of calling for economic TRC at some point. Now, we now have this challenge of Hollywood style that happened during the time of the Scorpion. Remember when people were arrested, there was always TV flighting on issues of forensic when it is coming to the black business communities. But when you look at the other communities or other races, we see corruption being coded with other pains. And we don't see that even our financial intelligence is working harder to deal with these elements that have been taking money from the state, and at the same time using a very good way of saying we will just pay the fine, we will just pay what is outstanding. But when we look at the African business community, they have been exposed and at the same time ridiculed in the media. So it is important that the fight against corruption doesn't have to have color. It should be colorless, and at the same time it should not frustrate development. It should not even go to a point where it makes the state not to be governable but ungovernable.
When you talk about development, I mean, certainly that is a worrying factor here, because corruption does stall development, and it doesn't even look like South Africa right now is well on its way towards attaining the goals that are set out in the National Development Plan. Those communities that are finding themselves tonight without water, communities that are still without development in the Free State, you still have communities that have got asbestos in their roofs. You're finding that Giyani water project is still not, fully fledged and running. There are villages in Limpopo that are sharing water with animals. Does this money that is recouped by one means or another, whether it's arrest, whether it's one form through fines and all of that, does it find its way back into development?
One can say very little and very remotely so, Sister Bongiwe, in the sense that even if this money that we want to recoup. Remember in 1998 we had a law that was dealing with asset forfeiture unit. You see, in that aspect, we did miss something, because it was more of passion in an American style, of that you can arrest, prosecute, and take their properties and make sure that they can be for development. But look at the recent cases of the hogs that have been arresting people in the same provinces that we have mentioned. But let me alert you, SIU have been working behind the scenes for almost 4 years. And some of this SIU investigation have been dragging because of political patronage. They've been dragging because people don't want to have their day in the courts. They've been threatening because people feel that to be in the tender and to can steal money of the communities, it is fashionable. So it is high time that we should take care of these issues of how do we really look at the proceeds and how do we have the return value of investigation vis-a-vis prosecution and return of assets. Because what is very important is the stolen assets that I did indicate earlier about that even during apartheid time, after 1994, some of those people who have stolen money during apartheid days, they were never investigated. And that's why we are having this problem of how do you even understand the capture? Is it the capture of the policy? Is it the capture of the state resources by the same liberators? So that is the question that we are facing in this country. And I think it is high time that we need to really think of the poorest, and remember developmental challenges, like we have said earlier, that are part of the DNA of our NDP and our constitutional framework as a basic human rights guarantors.